crime and punishment. It's more than just a boring book that I think everybody should read, it's also the topic of today's video. Because while many people know something about Japanese crime, specifically that its rates are low, very few know anything about its punishment. And Japanese punishment is among the harshest and most inescapable on the entire planet. Their prisons are notoriously draconian, and if you ever end up in their court system, there is a near 100% chance that you're going to be locked up. Which means one of two things. Either their penal system is perfect, or they're locking up a lot of innocent people. If you find yourself before a Japanese criminal court, there's upwards of a 99.98% chance that you're going to be convicted. Those are higher numbers than places where justice is a farce. That's higher than Saudi Arabia. That's higher than China. Even Stalinist Russia didn't put up those numbers. To put it simply, if their legal system puts you before a judge, you're going to be found guilty. But if you read interviews with certain members of the Japanese court, chances are you'll walk away thinking they haven't locked up a single innocent person in their entire careers. To quote transcripts I read preparing this piece, the legal system here claims that they would rather see 1,000 guilty go free than a single innocent man locked up. According to them, the way they've been able to achieve these astronomically high numbers is because Japanese prosecutors don't move forward until they're absolutely certain that they can obtain a conviction. And although it's obviously propaganda at its core, there is some truth in that statement. In comparison to a nation like Britain, for example, which sees conviction rates in the 70th percentiles, there's a much higher burden of proof required before they go to the courts. To save time and embarrassment, prosecutors in Japan tend to be very wary about trying cases that might end in acquittal. Naturally, nobody here wants to lose face. But conversely, this means that they're less likely to check their facts when they do. As the theory goes, if the prosecution is only going to bring cases that they're sure of, then they can be sure of the cases that they bring. In many ways, it's a rubber stamp from cop to cell. But even that can't quite explain these numbers. There's many countries on Earth that don't bring forward cases that they're not comfortable with, and there's many places on Earth where judges overtrust their prosecution. So there has to be another reason for it. To fill the gap, the answer must lie in culture. In Japan, like few places on Earth, loyalty reigns supreme. The imperial system destroyed by an American-written constitution may no longer be law, but it never truly left society. In Japan today, it would not be hard to argue that one's loyalty above all is to one's group, often one's job. To those in the public sector, that means a fairly direct Confucian subservience to the state, not in a robotic sense, but in a social one. In such a system, the state being wrong is akin to sacrilege. If someone is convicted, it isn't just the legal system that presumes them as guilty. Everyone does. Once stained, forever stained. Getting out, even with evidence to show genuine innocence, is virtually impossible. What judge wants to stand up and call the state wrong, the prosecutors wrong, their own group wrong? In 2007, a judge came forward to express regret about sentencing a man to die all the way back in 1968. He knew he was innocent at the time, but he locked him up anyway. He said that he was feeling pressured, not external pressure. Nobody was breathing down his neck about it. He felt it all internally. The two other judges on the case had said he was guilty, and for him to disagree was shameful. So despite the fact that he had written a 360-page document detailing the innocence of a man he would give the death penalty, he did it anyway. And then, shortly after, in true Japanese fashion, he quietly resigned. It was shameful to him to have committed this man to death knowing full well he was innocent, and he did not want to continue with the group that had forced him to do it, even if that force was internal. But what I find interesting is what he didn't do. What he didn't do, what he never dared to do, was call him innocent out loud, because the system had said he was guilty, and even when you know it's wrong, you do not question the system. As the death penalty in Japan is a strange story all its own, the man he sentenced to death row was still on it 40 years later. Eventually, in an extremely rare turn of events, the dedicated work of a single activist found him freed. His sister. The only one willing to speak up for him in the face of such social pressure. The judge who'd sentenced him, then in his 70s, wished to apologize for the horrors that he'd knowingly inflicted. But it was too late. By the time he was released, decades of draconian prison life had left his brain so addled that he couldn't even comprehend the tearful apology. The damage had been done. Justice had been served. Yet even now, having been acquitted and found innocent, released from prison and nearly vegetative in his capacity, the state continues to try to find him guilty. They haven't given up on their man because the system cannot be wrong. You don't get a 99.98 conviction rate letting people walk, even if they're innocent. This is an all too common story here. It's just one people rarely mention. Many people around the world praise Japan, and rightly so, for the successes that they've had. Faith in their system has led to a society with a plethora of achievements. It's a nation of hard workers, it sports a strong economy and extremely low rates of social unrest. Homeless are organized and slums are clean. Crime is low. The economy aims towards equality and worker rights, at least on paper, and it has long since been held in international esteem. But while we're quick to laud, we shouldn't also be overlooking the negatives. They may be less evident to the casual viewer, but they're certainly there. The government has been a virtual one-party system since the Second World War. One of the few times the opposition took power was this decade, and even then only for 3 years, with little to no changes to any actual policy. Japan's suicide rate is, and has been for a very long time, among the highest recorded on the planet. People's self-reported rates of misery and stress rival those of any system, anywhere, ever. Freedom on paper does not equate to freedom in practice, and it's in statistics like their conviction rate that we see that the best. I'm sure that many viewers will still be holding on to the idea that this legal system is somehow directly related to the low crime rates of Japan, but there's simply no evidence to suggest that. If anything, the system produces the opposite. Most crimes brought before the state never make it to court. Those that do are often deferred perpetually to avoid a statement of innocence. Criminals are much more capable of getting away with their crimes here because they know that justice will only be attempted if the prosecutors are certain to win. Because of that, Japan's recidivism rate is not one to be envied. Once a criminal, it seems, always a criminal. The crime rates of Japan are definitely lower than many other places on Earth, even being underreported as they are. But that's not because their conviction rate is obscene. They simply both stem from the same source: duty to the state, loyalty to one's group, and an incredibly strong desire to save face. I'm not saying that my system is better. I'm not even saying that any system is better. They're all just choices on a spectrum. But what I am saying is that Japan is almost certainly, and in a sense willingly, locking up innocent men and women to a degree that would shock any other nation, including the dictatorships. And the craziest part to me is that they're not doing it as a mistake. They're doing it because it's their job. This is Rare Earth.